name is Chris Sauerzopf, and I am here from SocialMLS and World Class Title. Thank you all for coming out tonight. This is our third fireside chat, minus the fire, but Bob's going to be bringing the heat. So just a couple of housekeeping items. Down the hallway to the right are the restrooms if you need it. Our food and beverage tonight is sponsored by World Class Title, so thank you, World Class Title. And again, thank you all for coming out. I want to introduce, well, before I do that, we're going to be taking live questions. So if you have a question, you can go on Twitter and mention @CSZopf up there, or use the hashtag SMLS chat. So we'll be taking live questions via Twitter if you have any of those. So I'll be periodically checking my phone. It's not because I'm texting anyone. It's because I'm looking for questions to ask Bob. So now, with that being said, I'm going to introduce our guests for this evening, Bob Miller from RE/MAX Premier Choice.
Well, thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Bob is past OAR president, past Columbus Realtors president, and I wanted to thank you for participating with us tonight. And you know, Bob, what we talked about, when we do this, is we really want to hear your story. We want to hear about how you got into the business, what it was like when you got started, and what it's like for you now. So if you wouldn't mind, could you share a little bit about who you are and why you're here tonight, what you're doing,
Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me. It's really an honor. I appreciate it. And second of all, for those of you who don't know, it's Chris's birthday today. So happy birthday to Chris. How many?
29.
29. Okay, that's good. I started in the, you want me to talk about real estate?
Well, so let's start back. Let me ask you first, where are you from?
Springfield, Ohio.
And how long have you, tell me about what happened after Springfield. Where did you go to college?
Went to Wittenberg University, and following that was a teacher and a coach for 2 years over east of here in Coshocton, Ohio. I don't know if anybody even knows where that is. And I lived in a little town called Roscoe Village. In the main street of Roscoe Village is White Woman Street. If you've never been there, you have to go there. That's the name of the street. It's all about a lady who, rather than marry an Indian, jumped off a rock, and hence White Woman Street for the last 300 years or so, something like that. Really great time. I was a teacher and a coach, had a lot of fun, had some terrific kids, and learned a lot, and then came here to Columbus in '73 and worked for IBM in the office products division. Maybe some of you are old enough to remember the typewriters with little balls on them. And I sold those to schools from here all the way out to Cambridge. And then I sold copiers. My best sale ever of a copier, and I can't tell you on a PG-rated show, was to Hustler magazine. And so had a lot of fun there. And then I decided I'd get into some real easy work and get into real estate. So I started with Max Holzer at Holzer Woolham, 1515 Bethel Road. And I started at a time when nobody really knew where Bethel Road was. You'd have to look on a map. And when I was working with Max, directly across the street, it was just a big bog. It was vacant land, and now there's just 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 or more little businesses in there. So, and Bethel Road has just exploded all up and down east and west. So started with Max, and then after Max, went to RE/MAX Unlimited, and then came up to the Shawnee Hills area, and had been there ever since 1987, where we opened RE/MAX Winners, which became RE/MAX Premier Choice, when I merged with Charlotte and Van Stein and Debbie Bauer. So that's where I am.
So let's back up. You were first licensed when?
1977.
And you decided to get into real estate because you thought it would be easy.
Well, not really. I'm teasing you. At the time with IBM, you might have to move, and I really didn't want to move. I really enjoyed Columbus. I liked it a lot. And I thought that real estate would be a nice opportunity for me to learn more about Columbus, and I thought it would be much more lucrative than being with IBM. So that's why I changed.
What was the business like back then, back in the late 70s, early 80s? Can you talk about some of that?
It was, I came on, Chris, just about the time that they had the first computers. And you would know better than I, but you stuck the phone into the modem, is that correct? And it would literally hammer, it sounded like a hammer. It would hammer out the listings that were available for you to see. No pictures, just hammer that out. Simultaneous to that, many of you may remember the Big Orange Book, the big fat orange book that was published every Friday, and that had all the listings from really the previous Friday that were new on the marketplace. At that point in time, if you were going to show a house, you generally had to go pick up a key at somebody's office. And you'd pick up, so in other words, if I was going to show you houses from 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock, about 4 o'clock, I had to go start picking up keys. And then you'd show the houses, and then you had to take keys back. If you were lucky enough to have written an offer, then you could not fax it, and you could not email it. You could only hand deliver it, and that's what you did. You took it back to that real estate office. And a lot of times that may have been in Grove City or could have been in Gahanna or whatever, so you had quite a trip ahead of you if you were going to hand deliver notes. I can remember vividly doing that one night in Reynoldsburg at 3 a.m. So it was a very, very different business now. Half the time I sit around going, I know I should be doing something else, and it's the old way of doing things. You don't need to do them that way anymore. So we've really come a long, long way. But then faxes came into being, and of course the internet, so it made life a lot easier.
It really kind of exemplifies the opportunities that technology has to make things more efficient and easier, right? How many transactions could you do when you were doing them that way in, say, a month?
You know what, Chris? You could still do a lot, but most people at the time did not have assistants that I remember. So you could do it, and you had to do your own paperwork, hence you might be there until 10 o'clock some nights. So you could still do a lot of transactions. You could still do very well.
What year did you begin with Remax?
1985. I started with Remax Unlimited again on Bethel Road, and some of you may remember George and Marlene Marshall. That was their shop, and Milt Lussenauer was in there with me, and a number of other people. And then from there, started our own shop up in Shawnee Hills. What
was that around that must have been in the early Remax franchise systems. When did they start doing that?
I think George bought if George didn't buy the first franchise, he bought the second franchise, and that was about in 78 or 79. And I think Lineker didn't start selling them, I want to say 73, 74, something like that.
That's interesting. From how you worked then to what it is now, what did you like about doing business that way?
You got to know a lot of the people at the front desk because you had to interact with them all the time when you go pick up keys and drop off keys or drop off an offer. And you got to know some people, and that was interesting to get to know them. You don't get to do that anymore because everything's on a lockbox, so you don't get a chance to meet those people. That was enjoyable. And there really was a sense, and I don't think that's left, there was a very big sense of camaraderie, primarily because the early 80s were so difficult. So everybody, we hang together, we hang separately. So,
can you talk about that, the early 80s, the difficult times? Can you talk about some of the early struggles you had and what you had to do to overcome?
The biggest struggle we had was there was no money. And so if you wanted to buy a house and you were a buyer, you were going to pay somewhere from 15 to 18%. And we have lenders in the room, and just do the math and you start to calculate how much house you can buy. It ain't much. And I'll never forget, I worked with a gentleman and his family. They were coming down from Cleveland, and he had just been offered a huge promotion, I believe with General Electric. And when he told me how much he was going to make, and that's back in the day when you could actually figure out how much they could buy on your own. When he told me how much he was going to make, and I took him to houses, they almost were in tears because they couldn't. It was like a step down from where they were up in Cleveland. At that point in time, a number of the major companies began to If they really wanted you in Columbus or Cleveland or wherever, they would put money in the bank, which would make up the difference. Effectively, you may have gotten a 10 or a 12% interest rate. They would put some money in the bank. The bank would take that out every month to assist you in making your payment so that you could buy more of a house, so that you could feel much better about who you were and what you did for that company. Very interesting. We had people that made blended rates. I mean, you would do anything you could do. Variable rates, you literally made them up, and that's just the way it was. So very interesting, though.
Yeah, it's interesting. Were you able to stay in full-time in real estate during that period, or did you have to moonlight?
No, I've always been.
When did that start to turn? When did things start to loosen up, and when did that start to turn?
Probably mid-'80s. Believe it or not, when the interest rate, we always thought it would really turn when the interest rate hit 10. And I think about 10 or 11, and it started to turn, and people had enough confidence in the market and enough confidence in their own employment that they would go out and they would go ahead and feel comfortable buying a house. Yeah, but 10 or 12%. So you can understand why people of my era, when people complain about 4.75, I mean, I laugh at them. I mean, it's like, we're getting screwed. No, trust me, you don't even know what that's about. So, what's that?
Did you think back then you would ever see single-digit increase?
And you know what, we prayed, you kind of thought you would, but the way things were going, you thought it might be 8, 9, or 10, and 8 or 9 anyway, so.
Talk about how you started your business early, where you focused your energies, what were you doing to generate business in the early days?
I knew Columbus fairly well because, as I mentioned, I called on every school in Columbus. So I was not afraid of going to some of these places. But I'm not from Columbus, and I had a few friends in Columbus, so I made sure they knew I was selling real estate. And, one thing leads to another, and you're constantly trying to do things. You would meet people at open houses. You would just do anything and everything you could to be able to generate some income. And it was kind of tough during those times of 80, 81. I remember, we were talking earlier, I remember holding open houses. I would hold 2 every Sunday, and very often nobody'd show up. Nobody'd show up. I mean, it's like 15%, I can't buy anything. So it was kind of a lost leader for me, but at least my name was out there. I was trying to show houses. Chris and I talked about, one of the things I did was to put an ad every 2 weeks in the Dublin Villager. Not a big deal, black and white, and it just was 4 houses. And I knew that there's a lot of people who think, well, I put one ad in and people should be ringing my door off, my phone off the hook. Well, you have to show consistency, at least that's what I thought. And after about a year of people seeing the stuff, my stuff, I got calls from people to buy a house, sell a house, whatever. So.
And where did you focus? Where's your business based out of? Where do you do the majority of your work?
At that point in time, I did it, when you cut your teeth back then, or when I did, a lot of the suburbs, the way they are now, just didn't exist. They were coming on, but they didn't exist. So did a lot of work over in Forest Park, Arlington, Clintonville, places like that. And then when Dublin began to expand, and then my wife and I, Norma and I, moved there, then that's where I did a lot of business. A lot of business. And, it's amazing. You do a ton of business when your kids are in school, too, because, people get to know you.
Yeah. So let's switch gears a little bit. What do you enjoy the most about real estate?
I absolutely enjoy the challenge of it. I enjoy putting deals together. I think that's a ball. I think finding out what people want and being able to produce that for them is really, it's still a treat. I enjoy doing that an awful lot. I kind of like, not as much as I used to, but I really enjoy working with first-time buyers because they don't have a clue what they want. It's fun to watch them hop around a little bit, but I enjoy being with the people, probably as much, if not more than anything.
You're a pretty happy-go-lucky guy, it seems, most of the time. What pisses you off?
That's a great question. Probably,
We won't tell anyone.
no. Probably incompetence, and incompetence when they don't even know they're incompetent. When people are trying to put something over on somebody, I don't really care for that. So those are a couple things that get me. It's kind of funny. A few weeks ago, I was thinking about this. I've only had to raise my voice to another agent 4 times in 39 years. And this guy was about to be the 5th, but I didn't, so.
You're very involved. Can you talk about your involvement in the organizations you're involved in and what that means to you?
I got involved in the Columbus Board of Realtors because Max told me to. Max said, you got to give back to your industry. And I got involved, and I've always been a very curious person, and I enjoyed seeing how things operate. I enjoyed being on various committees, seeing how things operated and what people did. And I will tell you, from my experience here in Columbus and around the state, we have some incredibly good people that are real estate agents in this state. They do an awful lot of good for their communities. There are people out there who hold programs once a year for the homeless. One guy around the state does a carnival to help people. We do a lot of very, very unusual and good things to help people around the state. And so that's been probably the most fun to get to know those people.
What's been the biggest change you've seen in the industry since you started to today? What's the number one thing that you've seen that's changed the most?
Well, I think in the end, people are still people, so that's not much of a change. I think probably the biggest change is going away is the internet. It used to be, and again, I was on the tail end of this, but if you wanted to see what was on the market, you had to drive the market. You had to literally get in your car and drive around. Which I had to do a few times. So that made it a little more difficult. And then you had, I was not part of the day when people used to have listings, which was, I would have your houses to sell. They were my listings, and I kept them in my pocket, and I tried to sell them usually on my own. That's the way that was done. And then came the multiple listing system, which I think has been a boon both to buyers and sellers because it gives everybody an even shot.
Dana Mack has a question for us from Twitter. Again, a reminder, if you have a question, you can tweet it.
Oh my God. Softball.
Dana's
My
question.
favorite color is green. No.
What was your first comp plan like back in the day?
My first what?
Comp plan, your compensation plan. What your broker
Oh,
plan?
that's a great question. That is a great question. I would say at that time in the 70s, and for quite some time thereafter, everybody was 50-50. 50-50. Remax came in and really screwed that one around a lot, but it was 50-50. And if you were really good and had been with the company for some time, you might get 60-40. But it was pretty much always 50-50. And that was the deal.
Was the standard comp like 3% commission, 6%?
We're not supposed to talk about that, but nonetheless, seriously, when I began, there were a lot of people would go to 7, and then somehow that just trickled away. So, it is what it is today, and but yeah, that's been an interesting thing too. But
Let's fast forward. Let's jump to what's your business been like the last 10 years?
It's been pretty good. The period from about 08 to 11 beat Norma and I up quite a bit, but we hung in there. And right now, it's pretty good, knock on wood. I try to do as much as I can with past clients. I try to do a lot, as much as I can, with people that I've met around the state, and I've asked that, and they send me referrals. So as much as I can, that's where I stay. I've read enough that all of these people say, hey, the people that know you are the people you worked with, so you might as well try to work with them because they're the people who know you the best, and rather than trying to get a new client. I mean, obviously, we all try to get new clients, but I try to work with my referrals as much.
Referrals is a big part of your business. How have you had to adopt and change through the years? What changes, if you talk about 2008, maybe that's an example. What have you had to do throughout the years to adopt and change and evolve in your business?
My kids would not believe this, but I've had to become more computer literate. I mean, he's forgotten more than I'll ever know, but I've had to become more computer literate. I've had to sit down with people to discuss different programs that I would have never considered. And usually my eyes go like this, because I usually go, you can do that? I didn't know, half the stuff I don't even know you can do. So, so it's a different ballgame. So I've had to adapt in that way.
What do you see moving forward? What do you see for not just you personally, but the industry? What excites you? What scares you? What do you see coming to the industry moving forward?
I think the one thing that I'm seeing is the industry. I think the days, and this is not all for sure, but I think the days of people saying, "Gosh, I like real estate and I like people, so what a good match I am to start working in the real estate business." I kind of think those days are over. This is a profession now, and you have people that are working it as a profession. I was just yesterday with a gentleman from Cleveland, and gosh, his name escapes me. He's got 50 people on his team, and they will do $140 million worth of business this year. Wow. And he was talking about some of the things they do. It's very, very interesting to be around people like that. I'm usually got my jaw is dropping when I see those numbers. But I think we're going to get better people, and the more educated people we get, then the better the business is going to become. Because we'll always find ways to sell things, be it commercially or residentially. But the good people will figure it out even faster.
What do you think about teams? What do you think about specializing, that sort of thing?
I think teams are great. Right now, I have a team of myself and my sister-in-law. And my sister-in-law Lucy gets upset because when we'll go on listing presentations, I will tell people that I can't fire her, and she doesn't like that too much. But anyway, we just kind of act as a team. Some of these big teams, I marvel at them. There's a tremendous amount of business sense that's involved in those, and those people, I admire them. They do a great job. I've then talked to people. I know I've been to some RE/MAX conventions. One gentleman from up in Chicago had about, way back in the day, even like in the late 90s, had about 15 people on a team. And he said, I came to the conclusion that after I paid everybody, I looked in my bank book and I had like $5. And he said he got out of being on a team. So there's pros and cons to it. But they are interesting to watch, I must say.
If you had to do anything over, what would you do again? Do differently in your business?
I would, if I could do anything over again, I know I would. I would learn how to be more computer literate. That's one of the things I would do. Probably another thing I would do would be to take as many sales courses as I possibly could. And I don't mean how to sell a home. I mean just generic sales courses to teach you how to sell water, anything you can sell.
How do you think the lack of computer and technical knowledge, how do you think that's limited? Do you think that's limited, or how has that limited you?
Chris, I don't think it's limited me, because I every so often get to hang out with people like you who tell me things, but I wish I did know more, because sometimes I have to go get somebody to help me do some stuff, but that's just the way it is. So I've got my own little area, so I'm able to do as much as I can do, but I'd like to expand that, because I know there's a lot more things I can do.
What are some of those things?
Probably do some more referral letters, probably do some more in getting in touch with people from around the state of Ohio that I've had great friends and great success with through the years. So those are some things that I would like to do, and I just don't have time to do them.
So if you were there's some younger agents here today. What would you suggest to them if they're just getting going in the business? Where would they start? What would you be doing day one?
That's a great question. I would probably, day one, I would try to figure out who my friends and relatives are, and I would send them all a letter, number one, saying I'm in the business. You need to list and sell through me. That would be the first thing I would do. Second thing I would do would probably be to immerse myself in some of the computer programs that we've got that would make my life easier. And thirdly, I would try as much as I could to get maybe a mentor in the company in which I was working, or at least have at least 3 or 4 people that I could go to ask questions. Because let me tell you, the first few years in the business, you don't know anything. It took about 3 years before the nomenclature got settled in my mind. People would bring things up, and I had no clue what they were talking about. But so those are the things I would do. Get a mentor. Or I've often told people, find somebody who you think is successful, call them up and ask them to go to lunch. I have not met one realtor who has said, no, I don't have time for you. We all love to talk, so obviously we'd be more than happy to talk with you about anything. So those are the things I would do if I had to start all over again.
Our Amy Long has a question for you, Bob. Do you think the requirements to become a realtor need to change? If so, in what ways? Is it too easy to become a real estate agent?
You get, Amy, you get a lot of people who say that it is more expensive to become a nail tech than it is to become a real estate agent in the state of Ohio. I would like to see that. I've wanted to see that changed for the longest time. I was on the board of directors, I think it was in 83, 84, when we voted, and I believe, if I'm not incorrect, that you now have to have an associate's degree to sit for the test. And they also put into effect the 30 hours of continuing ed. All of those, I think, are fantastic. The more we can do to professionalize ourselves, the better off we are, the better off our relationships will be with our fellow agents, and we'll sell a lot more real estate. I still, and many of you know Alec Haggerty by any chance? Alec is just a tremendous guy. He teaches all kinds of stuff around the state of Ohio. And I talked to him about developing just a sales class. You know, how to ask questions, how to close, how to do all those things. And, you know, I don't know that that'll ever come about. I think he said he does a little bit of that in a couple courses he teaches. But the more we can do to teach people the art of salesmanship, I know we're going to be that much further ahead.
What's on your plate next? What's next for Bob Miller in business, in personal? What's on your horizon?
I'm going to go play with my granddaughters. That's always number one. You know, just continuing to do the things that I've been doing, and then do a few more things with the computer, with the help of the computer, that will help me to generate more business. I go to my class reunions a lot, and they always want to know, well, you've retired, haven't you? And I go, no, I'm in the real estate business. We don't retire. We just continue on. And I told Norma a long time ago that they'll find me at my desk on a Monday morning, and they'll go, oh, that's where he was. You know, so yeah, I have no desire to retire, none whatsoever.
Do you think about legacy at all?
No.
Do you think about?
I mean, I've just done what I want. That's not for me to say anyway. It's just I've just done what I felt was right, and that's for somebody else to judge. So.
What do you want when you, after meeting with someone, what do you want people to think about you when you leave?
I want them to think that I've got a lot of knowledge, that I've been around this block so many times before that there probably isn't a question or an experience I haven't encountered. I've often told people when I'm showing them houses that I have literally, and I know some of you are the same, I've walked in on literally everything but murder. So I'll let you think about what the other things I may have walked in on were. So, you know, it's a fun business. And I think probably, you know, you talk about my early years, well, maybe I did it because I felt that I had to, but I probably took it too seriously. You gotta have fun with it. So I'm dedicating myself to having more fun with it.
So you have you're a great storyteller. What can you share with us one of the funnest moments you've had in the business?
Wow.
I just heard about a product that you and Larry developed a few years back. Maybe you want to share that.
Well, Larry, should I? I mean, it's patented and copyrighted. I don't know if we can talk about it. Larry and I've known Larry an awfully long, too long actually, and in the early '80s when the rates were 18 to 20%, everybody was looking to do something else. And Larry and I came up with, we thought, a great idea of mobile proctology. And we developed some plans, none of which ever really took off very well. But we thought that might, that could have been a big moneymaker for us, Larry. Yeah, at least something like that. So every time I see Larry, for the last 40 years, we always put our hands up like this. So
Who is going to be the field agent on that one?
we didn't get that far, Chris. It was.
Well, good. What do you want to leave us with? Do you have anything? Did you come into this tonight with any thoughts that you wanted to share with the group here tonight?
This is a good group. I know many of you out there, and I know many of you, as I said, I'd like to see more people become more and more professional. You're doing that anyway. Usually when you attend these things, you're talking to the choir anyway. It's just like when I was a teacher, and you had a parent-teacher night. The people that usually came were the people with A students, and you're like, I wanted to see this kid. But, so you're here. But if I could leave you with anything, I think it would be get more involved. Get involved at the local level with the area associations. You know that we are the only city in the United States that has those. They are, you're not supposed to use a modifier with unique, but they are most unique because no one has them. And I brag about them all the time because I had nothing to do with them. Those were put in probably by Harley and Max and a lot of those guys from way back when. And they are tremendous opportunities to get to meet and get to know your fellow agents. I think that's terribly important. And to be able to go through houses. Now, what we used to do back when we started, we would jump in cars with people that we didn't know. And, I learned an awful lot about Dublin and about areas around Dublin just from talking to and listening to them. So that, and I did that, and part of the reason I've always been involved at the board and with Ohio and with the national was so that if I'm with a buyer or I'm with a seller, and I can talk about the fact that, oh, this guy just said this and Congress is doing that. So it's just another way for me to say, I have all the experience in the world you need. You don't need to go any further. I'm your guy. Sometimes it works, as we all know, sometimes it doesn't. But by all means, get involved. Don't sit at home. And I know that's a problem with a lot of people. They work out of their home offices. Don't sit at home. Get out there. Take people to lunch that you'd like to learn from. Get out. Go on tours. Go to. If I could tell people what to do, I would say go to at least 2 tours a week, just to meet the people and just to get to see the properties. I think that important because again, when you're driving down the street, people say, "Well, how much is that?" And you go, "Well, that area is this, that's that." And when all you got to do is do that once because they're testing you. Just do it once. Well, that's 250s to 300. That's 3 to 4. You're done. You've proven that you know what you're talking about. And you can't do that unless you're out there. And you also can't do that from sitting at home looking on the computer. You just can't do it. So I guess if I would leave you with anything, it would be get involved. Get involved. It's a great business. Best people I've ever met in my life. Tremendous people.
Thanks, Bob.